That day, my father left my house, saying he'd take a short walk. I never saw him again. For 5 years, I searched every street, every shelter. Then one day, his face appeared on the news. I would never forget it. That morning, my father stood by the doorway, his hand gripping the old wooden frame like it was the only thing keeping him steady. "I'll just take a short walk, sweetheart. Need some air," he said softly. His voice was calm, but his eyes weren't. There was something trembling behind them, something I didn't understand until years later. He smiled at me one last time, then stepped out into the cold November fog, and that was the last time I saw him. Days turned into months, then years. Every phone call, every knock on the door made my heart jump, but it was never him. 5 years later, just as I'd stopped believing I'd ever find answers, I saw his face again on the evening news, and the headline beneath it made my blood freeze. I still remember the smell of burnt toast that morning. I'd overslept, rushing to get ready for work, while Dad sat quietly at the kitchen table sipping coffee that had long gone cold. He looked tired and older somehow, though he hadn't changed much physically. There was just a heaviness around him, like he was carrying something invisible. "Dad, you okay?" I asked, grabbing my bag. He smiled faintly. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how sometimes people disappear long before they actually leave." I laughed it off, not realizing he meant it. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and took a deep breath. "I'll take a short walk, Emma." "Clear my head. Do you want me to come with you?" He shook his head. "No, sweetheart, this one's just for me." And then just like that, he was gone. At first, I didn't panic. My dad often took walks when he missed Mom. But when hours passed and his phone went straight to voicemail, something in my chest began to twist. By sunset, the street lights flickered on, but he hadn't come home. His shoes weren't by the door. His favorite cap was missing. I called the police that night. "Ma'am, is there any sign of foul play?" the officer asked. "No," I said, my voice shaking. "Just absence," he sighed. "Adults sometimes need space." Heck turns up, but he didn't. I retraced his usual routes through the park, along the riverbank to the corner diner where he always ordered black coffee and apple pie. No one had seen him. By day 3, I was putting up flyers. By week 2, I was calling hospitals. By month 1, I barely slept. One afternoon, a postcard arrived. No return address. "I'm fine, don't look for me." I recognized the handwriting immediately. I stared at the words for hours, tracing each curve of ink. It was him, but not him. Dad never wrote short notes. He'd always left long, rambling messages with doodles in the margins. This one felt cold. I called Lily, my best friend. "What if he's in trouble?" I asked. "Emma," she said gently. "Sometimes people disappear because they want to. Maybe he needed to start over." But I knew my father. He wasn't the kind of man who'd walk away from love or from me. That night, I placed the postcard on the nightstand beside his photo. The smile in that picture mocked me, like he was keeping a secret, even from the camera. Somewhere out there, my father was alive, and whatever made him leave that morning hadn't let go of him yet. Days turned into weeks, and weeks bled into months. Every sunrise felt like a reminder that he hadn't come home. I started to measure time not in days, but in searches. I searched the bus routes first, then the shelters, then the hospitals. I kept a notebook filled with names, phone numbers, and dead ends. Each call ended with the same line. "Sorry, miss, no one by that name here." I quit my job at the bookstore 6 months after he vanished. My boss tried to talk me out of it, but I couldn't shove novels while my own story was unfinished. Instead, I joined volunteer search teams. I stood in the rain, pinning missing person flyers to telephone poles. My father's smiling face staring back at me through cheap ink and tears. People stopped me on the street sometimes. "Any luck?" they'd ask softly. I'd smile tight and rehearse. "Not yet." Lily came by every Friday with food I never ate. "You can't keep doing this forever, Em," she'd whisper. "I can't not do it," I'd reply. He didn't just vanish into thin air. But as the years passed, hope began to change shape. It became quieter, heavier, the kind that sat in your bones and whispered, "What if he doesn't want to be found?" I started visiting shelters late at night, just before they closed. I'd show his picture over and over. "Seen him." "Sorry, sweetheart. We see hundreds like him." The 5th year hit differently. I turned 29 and celebrated alone with a candle and an empty chair. The house still smelled faintly like his aftershave, though I hadn't touched the bottle in years. That's when the postcards stopped. There had been 4 of them in total, all written in the same careful handwriting. Always short, always distant. I'm safe. Don't worry, you'll understand soon. The last one arrived on the anniversary of his disappearance. I love you, kiddo. This is goodbye. I remember holding that card to my chest, shaking, whispering to the empty room. No, not goodbye, not yet. Still, life went on around me. Lily got married. My old coworkers moved away. Even the police had long stopped returning my calls, but I couldn't let go because something deep inside told me his story wasn't over. Then, one ordinary evening, 5 years after the day he left, I was making soup when the news interrupted the program. Breaking news: man found living under alias in Seattle, possible link to cold case disappearance. I froze. The photo flashed on screen. My hands went numb. The spoon clattered to the floor because there he was, my father. And his eyes, even through the camera, looked terrified. The moment I saw his face, time stopped. The news anchor's voice faded into static, replaced by the pounding of my heartbeat. The man on the screen looked older, his beard unkempt, his hair stare with gray. But those eyes, I'd know them anywhere. My father's eyes. The chyron below the image read, Cincinnati police detained a man living under false identity. Connection to missing person case from Oregon. My breath caught in my throat. I turned up the volume. Authorities have identified the man as Richard Hale, believed to have vanished 5 years ago. He has been living under the name Daniel Marks. Sources say he may be linked to a second disappearance of a woman named Margaret Collins. Margaret Collins. The name felt like lightning striking my spine. That was my mother's middle name. The reporter continued. The investigation is ongoing and police are requesting next of kin to come forward. Ado had it stayed by the work. I didn't even think. I grabbed my keys, my phone, my father's old photo and ran. Lily called as I was halfway down the freeway. Emma, where are you? Seattle, Seattle, Emma, what's going on? I found him, my voice broke. He's alive. The line went silent for a moment. Are you sure? I saw him on the news. It's him, Lily. It's him. By the time I reached the city, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. I called the Seattle Police Department, explaining everything between sobs. Ma'am, the officer said, if you're family, you can come down to the precinct, but prepare yourself. The man we have isn't in good shape. That sentence echoed in my mind all the way there. When I finally arrived, the station smelled like stale coffee and rain-soaked paper. A young detective led me to a small viewing room with a one-way mirror, and there he was. He sat at the metal table, hands folded, eyes fixed on nothing. His face was thinner, worn, haunted. But it was him, my father. Why is he here? I whispered. The detective exchanged a look with his partner. He claims he left on his own. Says he was protecting someone. Protecting who? The officer sighed. A woman named Margaret Collins, she's still missing. My heart nearly stopped. That name, it's familiar. The detective studied me. It should be. According to what we found, she might be your mother. The room began to spin. That's impossible, I whispered. My mother died 15 years ago. Maybe not, he said quietly. Through the glass, my father suddenly lifted his head like he knew I was there. His lips moved soundlessly, and even without hearing him, I knew exactly what he said. Don't trust them. When they finally let me see him, my legs felt like they'd forgotten how to move. The hallway to the interrogation room was long, humming with fluorescent light. I clutched the photograph from my graduation, the last day I'd seen him proud and whole. The officer opened the door quietly. He's fragile, he warned. Keep it calm. I stepped inside. He was sitting there, shoulders slumped, his hands trembling slightly. For a moment I just stared, afraid that if I spoke, the image would dissolve like a dream. Dad, my voice cracked. His head lifted, his eyes widened. Emma, I nodded, tears already spilling. I thought you were dead. He tried to stand, but the handcuffs clinked softly against the table. You shouldn't be here, he whispered. You have to stay away from this. From what? I demanded. 5 years, Dad, 5 years of nothing but silence and postcards that made no sense. He flinched like my words were physical blows. I did it for you, he said. For me? I laughed bitterly, walking out, faking your life, letting me think you were gone. That was for me. He leaned forward, eyes glassy. If you knew the truth, they would have come for you too. Who? I shot back. Who are they, Dad? The same people who took Mom. His lips pressed into a thin line. She's not dead. The world stopped. I blinked. What did you just say? He swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. She's alive, Emma, and I had to keep her that way. I stumbled back, gripping the cold metal chair for balance. That's impossible. We buried her. There was a funeral. It was staged, he said. Everything. The car crash, the reports, even the body. She had to disappear. I shook my head violently. Why? Why would Mom pretend to die? He looked down at his hands. Because she knew something people were willing to kill for. Before I could respond, the detective stepped back into the room. Time's up, he said flatly. No, I turned on him. You can't just stop this now. But my father's gaze met mine again. Calm now, almost peaceful. Listen to me, he whispered. They'll tell you I'm crazy, don't believe them. Fine, Margaret. She's the key. The officer touched my shoulder gently. Miss Hale, please. As they led me out, my father's voice echoed behind me. Remember, sweetheart, not everything lost is meant to be found. When the door closed, I pressed my back against the wall, gasping for air. My world, my memories, my grief had just been turned upside down. If my mother was alive, everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. And I was about to find out just how deep that lie went. The night after seeing Dad, I didn't sleep. I sat in my hotel room with the curtains drawn, surrounded by files and notes that meant nothing. My father was alive. My mother may be alive, too. Every question I'd buried for 5 years clawed its way back. The next morning, I went back to the police station. The detective, Agent Miller, looked uneasy when he saw me. Miss Hale, you really shouldn't be here again. I'm not leaving, I said. I need answers. He sighed and gestured for me to sit. There are things your father didn't tell you. He slid a thin file across the table. Inside were photos, grainy, decades old. Dad, younger, standing beside industrial tanks marked with Harrison Chemical Corp. My stomach tightened. He worked there before I was born. Yes, Miller said. And that company was at the center of a major environmental scandal in the late 90s. Illegal waste disposal. Your father was one of the engineers who testified until he suddenly retracted his statement. Why would he do that? Because his wife went missing right after he agreed to testify. The message was clear. I froze. You mean Mom? He nodded. Margaret Hale. She vanished 3 days before the court hearing. The car accident you remember was staged. Your father cooperated afterward. The case was buried. My throat tightened. So all this time he's been running from them, from the people who wanted both of your parents silenced, he said quietly. We think he found her recently and was trying to protect her again. I stared at the file, the truth cracking open inside me like glass, my childhood memories. Dad whispering on the phone, Mom's sudden anxiety. The night she tucked me into bed and said, If I ever go away, don't be scared. All of it made sense now. Miller continued. Your father's aliases, the fake addresses, the postcards, they were part of a network we think he built to communicate with her. I looked up sharply. She's alive then. He hesitated. We don't have confirmation, but there have been sightings of a woman matching her description in Montana. She goes by the name Margaret Collins. I tear in the SC in the Tier More in the Dallas office and video in scansions. The name from the news broadcast. When I left the station, the rain had started again. I walked aimlessly through the streets, clutching the file to my chest. Every page felt heavier than the last. Back at the motel, I called Lily. Lily, it's real. Everything, the postcards, the lies they were protecting. Mom, she was silent for a long time. Emma, if this is true, then your whole life was built on a cover-up. I don't care, I whispered. I just need to find her. Over the next few days, I went through every document, every map, every lead. The deeper I dug, the darker it got. Names of executives, secret payments, coded letters in Dad's handwriting. Then, tucked inside the file, I found a photo I'd never seen before. My parents are standing together at a company picnic. Dad's arm around Mom, both smiling. But behind them, blurred in the background, was a man I didn't recognize, his eyes fixed straight on them. On the back, Dad had written in shaky ink. If you find this, it means they found me first. Trust no one. I felt the blood drain from my face. Dad hadn't just vanished to protect Mom. He'd vanished because someone was still hunting them both. 2 days later, I got a call from Agent Miller. Emma, he said, his tone low and urgent. We've confirmed a location. Your mother's alive. The words didn't make sense at first. Alive. How do you process that someone you buried 15 years ago has been breathing all along? He continued. She's in protective custody at a safe house in Montana. She's agreed to meet you. My heart slammed in my chest. When, tomorrow morning, its presence. The next 20 hours felt like a lifetime. I barely slept, replaying every memory of her, the way she sang while cooking, the scent of her lavender lotion, the warmth of her hand on my head. By dawn, I was already on a plane. When the car pulled up to the safe house, I could barely breathe. A wooden cabin nestled in the trees, quiet and remote. Miller opened the door for me. She's inside. I stepped in. The air smelled of pine and something familiar like home. Then I saw her. A woman stood by the fireplace, her back turned. Mom, she froze slowly. She turned around. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with gray. But her eyes, those soft green eyes, were the same. Emma, her voice broke. I took a step forward, but my knees gave out. She rushed to me. And suddenly I was in her arms, sobbing like a child. I thought you were dead, I whispered. I had to let you think that, she cried. If they knew you existed, they would have killed you too. We sat down shaking. I didn't even realize Agent Miller had stepped out, leaving us alone. Mom, I said through tears. Dad told me you were alive. He said he did it to protect you. She nodded slowly. He saved my life. After the explosion, he found me barely breathing. The company wanted us gone after what we uncovered. What did you uncover? She hesitated, then reached for a locked box on the table. Inside were documents, faded photos, and a small flash drive. They were dumping toxic waste into the river. Your father had the data to prove it. Names, dates, proof of bribery. We were going to expose them. Then the accident. I felt my stomach twist. The accident? That wasn't an accident, she nodded. Your father thought if we both disappeared, they'd stop looking. But they didn't. They watched you. That's why he left 5 years ago. Someone found him. He ran to draw them away from you. I covered my mouth, shaking. All this time, I thought he abandoned me. Tears streamed down her face. He never stopped protecting you, Emma. Every postcard, every coded message, it was him making sure you were safe. I buried my face in my hands. He's in police custody. They think he's unstable. She looked up sharply. Then we have to clear his name. She handed me the flash drive. Everything's on this. The truth. But we can't trust anyone, not even Miller. The corruption goes higher than you think. A noise outside made us both freeze, tires on gravel. A car door slamming. Mom grabbed my hand. They found us. Before I could ask who, the back window shattered. A flash of light. Someone shouted, "Run!" She screamed. We bolted through the kitchen door and into the woods, hearts pounding, branches whipping against our faces. Behind us, headlights cut through the trees. Mom stumbled, clutching her side. I helped her up, adrenaline surging. This way, I gasped, pulling her toward the river. Bullets cracked through the air. One struck the tree beside us, sending splinters flying. And in that moment, as the flash drive burned cold in my pocket, I realized the truth wasn't just dangerous. It was deadly. We didn't stop running until the forest swallowed the last trace of headlights. My lungs burned, every breath a scream. Mom clung to my arm, bleeding from a gash on her shoulder. We collapsed behind an old shed, the night thick and wet with rain. Mom, you're hurt, I whispered. I'm fine, she panted. It's not deep, but we have to keep moving. Who are they? I demanded. Who's chasing us? Her eyes were fierce despite the pain. The same people your father tried to expose. Harrison Chemical never went away. They just changed names. Their security team found out I was still alive. My mind spun. So they want the flash drive. She nodded. That drive holds everything. Your father risked everything to get it. A rustle in the bushes made us freeze. Then footsteps. Emma, a voice shouted. Emma Hale, it was Agent Miller. He emerged from the darkness, hands raised. It's me. You need to come with me now. Mom stiffened. Don't trust him, she hissed. Miller, they found us, I cried. We have to go. He cut me off. I am they, Emma. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Time stopped. Mom stepped in front of me, trembling. You sold us out, he sighed, his expression tired. It's not what you think. I'm just doing my job. Hand over the drive and no one gets hurt. Mom's hand found mine, squeezing hard. Run. Miller raised his gun. Don't, everything happened at once. Mom shoved me aside. The gun fired. A deafening crack split the air. She fell to her knees. No, I screamed, lunging forward. I grabbed the nearest rock and swung, hitting Miller's wrist. The gun flew from his hand. We struggled in the mud, his weight crushing me. My hand slipped, desperate. Then another shot rang out. His body went limp. I blinked, breathless, realizing it wasn't me. Behind him stood my father. He was pale, shaking, still in his worn prison clothes. Rain soaked his hair, blood streaking his temple. "Dad," he dropped the gun and fell beside me. "Are you hurt?" I thought you were in custody. I escaped," he said hoarsely. "I heard what they were planning. I couldn't let them find you." Mom groaned weakly. He crawled to her, cradling her head in his lap. "Margaret, stay with me. Please," she smiled faintly. "You always show up too late," she whispered. "Not this time," he said, his voice breaking. Her fingers brushed my cheek. "Emma, promise me you'll finish this. Don't let them bury the truth again." "Mom, please," but her hand went still. I screamed, clutching her as the rain poured harder. Dad held her close, silent, tears mixing with the storm. "She was right," he whispered. "We can't let her die for nothing." He turned to me, his expression fierce. "You still have the drive," I nodded. "Then you have everything they killed for. You have to tell the world." "Not without you," I said, shaking. He looked at me, eyes soft now. "You're stronger than both of us ever were." He pressed a flash of metal into my palm. "Mom's wedding ring. Keep it for when this is over." Suddenly, lights cut through the trees, sirens shouting. "Drop your weapon," voices commanded. Dad stood up slowly, raising his hands. "Emma, run, I'm not leaving you." He smiled, that same tired, gentle smile from the morning he left 5 years ago. "You already did once, it's okay." Before I could reach him, officers swarmed the clearing. Shots fired. Chaos, screaming. When it ended, Dad lay still beside Mom, their hands intertwined in the mud, the flash drive burned in my pocket. I stood there, drenched and trembling, the truth heavy in my hands. The truth had cost me everything. But I knew what I had to do next. The next morning, the world woke up to a storm, and not just the one outside. Every major network carried the same headline. Harrison chemical scandal reopened after new evidence surfaces. I watched from a sterile hospital bed, IV in my arm, my body bruised, my mind hollow. They'd taken me in after the gunfire, questioned me for hours. I told them everything, every name, every lie, every piece of the story that had cost my parents their lives. And when I handed over the flash drive, I made sure they knew. This wasn't just about corruption. This was about the truth. The agent across the table had whispered, "You realize this could bring down people in power, right?" I'd looked him straight in the eye. "Good." They tried to call it a tragedy. I called it justice. A week later, I stood by the river where it all began, the one where Dad used to take walks on quiet mornings. The sky was gray, the air sharp and still. I held their wedding rings together on a chain around my neck. "They didn't run away from me," I whispered to the wind. "They ran for me." The government issued posthumous commendations. The media called my parents whistleblowers. But none of it filled the silence left behind. Sometimes I still dream of that last night. The rain, the gunfire, the way Dad looked back at me before raising his hands. That was the moment I finally understood him. He wasn't just protecting secrets. He was protecting me. Lily drove up from Portland one weekend bringing flowers. She found me sitting under the old oak tree where we buried their ashes side by side. "You did it," she said softly. "You finished what they started." I nodded, tracing my fingers over their names carved in stone. "But it doesn't feel like victory." "It's never a victory," she said. "It's survival." As the sun dipped below the hills, I took one last look at the quiet house beyond the field, the same one Dad had walked away from 5 years ago. He'd promised me he was just taking a short walk. Maybe in some way he was right. Because after all the lies, the losses, and the years of searching, I'd finally found where that walk had led him. To the truth, to peace, to home. And as I turned to leave, the wind picked up, rustling through the trees like a whisper. "Don't look for me," it seemed to say. I smiled faintly. "It's okay, Dad. I finally know where you are."